السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
It's always an honor to be with you, brothers and sisters, here in Austin, and I want to thank everyone for inviting me. And also, I would like to offer my condolences these days as we're commemorating the martyrdom anniversary of Her Holiness Lady Fatima alayhi wassalam. And inshallah, tomorrow I'll speak more about that. Tonight I want to go through a particular introduction. Everything in existence has...
Excuse me, Sheikh. Can you speak a little louder?
Yes, yes.
Can you please take this?
So everything in existence has a zahir and a batin. It has an outer dimension and it has an inner dimension. But the important aspect is that the inner dimension, the batin, is, but the zahir appears. There's a difference here. Everything has a zahir and a batin. The batin is, the zahir appears. Now there are different realms to existence. Each higher realm or more metaphysical realm than the realm below it is regarded as the batin to that realm. But even the batin has many different degrees. But there's an ultimate batin also. And that is pure existence. And that is everything else appears. So philosophers of old and new, and sometimes scientists, when they come across the problem of existence and say that nothing here, this microphone, this book, this person, doesn't exist, they're right and they're wrong. But it can be justified very easily, and we don't have to panic when we come across such theories and words. Nothing exists but that pure existence that we call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that ultimate batin. That is, one of Allah's names in the du'as that we have is Ya Mawjood, O existent, O existing one. Allah's names are Allah's, and no one else shares those names. Only Allah has them independently and originally. And therefore, when we call other things an existing thing, we don't mean it in the same way when we refer to Allah. And even more so, we don't even believe they are existing. Only one thing exists, and that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Pure existence. There's no room for a separate, independent, existing thing. But what we see, it certainly manifests and appears, and these manifestations and appearances may be physical or metaphysical, but it all emanates from that one pure existence. Qul Hu Allah Ahad. Okay. And then, continuing with this theme that everything has a zahir, an outer dimension, and a batin, when we go to the Quran also, the verses of the Quran, and all Islamic texts, they also have an outer dimension and an inner dimension. And even if you speak with children, even children understand this, that there's always something beyond what we see. And when you speak with children about creation, they always ask questions. They're looking for that thing just beyond. It's just that when they grow up, because they've been molded into a certain way of thinking, things become a bit problematic later. But the fact that every manifestation has a batin and there's something beyond is something which even children understand. When it comes to verses of the Quran and texts in Islam, here too, there's a zahir, an outer dimension, and there's a batin. There's an inner dimension to this verse, to this ritual, to this hadith, to this dua. Here the youth become very thirsty to know what the batin of this verse is, of this dua is, of this ritual is. And the elders can't explain it to them. They become frustrated. You see? And the youth have a legitimate right here to ask such questions, because you can't just suffice with the zahir of religion. And the youth, for a period of time, they suffer in this period of frustration until they enter the worldly life and they're drowned and become okay with it, but they never find their answers. Because we believe that even all rituals of Islam, all du'as in Islam, all verses and ahadith, is a zahir, no one denies it, but there are inner, esoteric, batini meanings also. When it comes to stories of the Quran, here too, the stories of the Quran, it has a physical, historical, real meaning relating to events that really did happen, but is that it? Or is there some more significant inner, esoteric, batini understandings of the stories of the Holy Quran? Here, Ibn Arabi, in one of his books, in relation to the stories of the Quran, he says, فَالظَّاهِرُ مَعْنَا مُطَابَقًا لِلْوَاقِعِ. The outer meaning of the stories, they are on a par with reality. These stories happened once upon a time, and no one denies that. وَبَاطِنُهُ, but the inner dimensions of these stories, دَالًا عَلَى صُورَةِ السُّلُوكِ وَبَيَانِ حَالِ السَّالِكِ. But the inner dimensions of these stories are indicating the form of wayfaring and the states of the wayfarer. وَأَشَدَّ تِبَاقًا. And these are more on a par with reality than just a physical story. So even the stories of the Holy Quran bear this inner meaning. Even characters in Islam, holy figures in Islam, there's a dhahir with their passport details, who the father was, who the mother was, when they were born, where they were born, and then their childhood years, and so on and so forth, and it's all good. And then there we stop. But the inner dimensions to these figures, their attributes, what their attributes bear with them. These are very important discussions. For example, with Her Holiness Lady Fatima alayhi salam, she has many names. She has many attributes. One of those attributes is Batul, one of her names. One who never is contaminated or experiences the blood which women experience usually on a monthly basis. That's the Zahir meaning of Batul. Someone who has no menstruation, never had menstruation. But then the inner dimensions of what it means to be Batul, in a metaphysical sense, there's no male or female then. And then, since she was Batul, both on a Zahiri and Batini sense, men and women in the Batini sense have to endeavor to become Batul. But what does that mean? And I won't cover this. I'm not sure whether it will be covered in these 3 days. But in the series during this time in America, I will cover this subject. But once you know what the inner meanings of Haid, menstruation, is, then you will understand how a man may also be a Ha'id. And that's much worse. But in the Batini sense, so all these have to be explored. But if we just suffice with the external details and features of the Imams, of our holy figures, it's a bare minimum. You're not growing. It's a bit of history at best. The soul isn't growing. You're still deaf, dumb and blind. It's only when you have access to the Batin, incorporate the Batin, does the soul grow. Otherwise, is sufficing with the Zahir? No, there's no growth. Ibn Arabi, in one of his works again, he writes that إذا عصيت الله تعالى بموضع, if you rebel against Allah in a given location, you sin. فلا تبرح من ذلك الموضع حتى تعمل فيه طاعة. Don't move from that location. When you sin in a given location, don't move away from that location until you execute or commit an act of obedience to Allah. Then we can ask why. What's the reason behind this? He says because the location will testify against you in the hereafter when you sinned at that particular location. Try to compensate that effect by doing something good also in that location so it testifies to your good deeds. He starts with this. Then he says the same applies with clothing. Your clothes will testify against you. The clothes that you were wearing when you committed certain sins will testify against you in the hereafter. He says in those clothing, first of all, don't sin, but if you do, also commit good actions with the same clothing, so it testifies to your good actions too. The first was location. The second was clothing. Inna lillah, we're all Allah's, whatever is. Wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Everything will be resurrected. Everything. Everything has a resurrection. Allah is one, pure existence. Whatever is a manifestation of Allah's attributes. Whatever is manifests all of Allah's attributes. Whatever is. But to varying degrees. Nothing is Allah less. Nothing is existence less. And so locations, clothing, they talk. In the hereafter, they talk now, but we're not aware. They have to. Everything is talking. One of Allah's names is Mutakallim, the speaker. So everything speaks, but to varying degrees. Ash-Shahid, Allah is Shahid. Everything testifies to varying degrees. Nothing, no thing is free from one attribute of Allah. Whatever is has all of Allah's attributes and is manifesting them, but some things manifest it more than others. The first was location, be careful. The second was clothing, be careful what you do. Then he gives other examples. And all these examples we have in our ahadith and in fiqh. And it's only with this logic that we can understand many of the esoteric dimensions of the Sharia. He says that when you're cutting your nails, or when you're removing your facial hair, or trimming your facial hair, men or women, or when you're even cutting your hair in general. He says, be careful that when you're doing these actions, that you are in a state of taharat, purity, and dhikr, recalling Allah. This is something we have, we must have to do, always to be in a state of wudu, to always be in a state of recalling Allah. Why do you think it's mustahab to cut your nails on certain days, at certain times, reciting certain words, certain du'as? And then it's even mustahab when you cut your nails to bury it under earth. I once encountered an old man in Iran once, and he actually did that. And when I asked him why, I was much younger then, he said it has respect. Ihtiram da'at. Yes. I certainly didn't understand that, and I'm not sure how much he understood, or whether he was just simulating an old custom. But the custom's important here. It's based on important Islamic principles. Here Ibn Arabi is saying that this is different to a location. The location isn't you. The clothing isn't you, but your body parts are in unity with you. Whatever is in your body is in unity with your soul. It's just that the soul is an immaterial dimension. This physical part, your nails, your fingers, your hair, everything, it's a physical manifestation of that immaterial soul. There's a unity there. Once you cut your nails or your hair, that which you have cut and detached from yourself is no longer in unity with the immaterial soul. It's been cut away, detached now. Ibn Arabi is saying, before I just say that, once it becomes detached, it becomes like a location or that piece of clothing. It's no longer you. And therefore it will be resurrected as a separate entity. The nail, the hair, everything will be resurrected. And it will speak. It will testify. Ibn Arabi is saying, when you cut your nails, when you eliminate your facial hair, when you cut your hair, be careful that you do it in a state of taharat, purity. In a state of wudu, for example. And in a state of dhikr. That's why we have all these du'as when you cut your hair, when you cut your nails, and so on and so forth. Why should we be in a state of dhikr or in a state of purity? It continues. Because that which becomes separated from you will be asked, how were you abandoned? See, how were you abandoned? Were you abandoned in a state of impurity? In a state of absence of dhikr? Or were you abandoned in a state of purity? In a state of dhikr? And then they will testify. And that's one of the reasons why you have to always be in a state, not must, but have to try, and always be in a state of tahara. It's interesting that when you bury hair or you bury nails, it's a kind of respect you're giving, a part of nature. You're respecting them when you bury them. It's different to just throw them away. They're living things. And look at what kind of a living thing it is. Very low status, but still. They are. It's existing. And that's why it's mustahab to do such a thing. In fiqh, when someone dies, well, when they're alive and they cut their hair, there's no wajib duty in relation to their hair. It's mustahab though, to bury it. But when the person dies, on death, if their hair were to be separated from them, it's wajib to bury it. It becomes wajib. If the detachment occurred at death. One of the reasons for that is this, that when we're living and we cut our hair, we become detached from it in this world. We have no attachment towards it. But on death, if it was to be detached, taken away from us on death, the person after death, since they still think it's them in this world after death, because of that extensive attachment and affinity towards the body, they still think it's them. They're dead. And that's why in Islam you have to treat the deceased, the body, with utmost care and respect. Not to put heavy things upon them. To clothe them properly. You have to respect them, you can't disrespect them at all. There's heavy penalties associated with it. And one of those things also is when, if their body parts are disconnected from them after death, they have to be buried with them because of that extensive attachment they have to it. But in this world, they become detached from it, but after death, no. And it becomes wajib to bury it with them. And then he continues with this. These are just examples of just the Sharia having esoteric dimensions, which are important for us to understand. The man, the male, human, also has a zahir and a batin. The woman also has a zahir and a batin. Usually during Fatimiyya period, I give 1 or 2 lectures on the status of women from an Irfani angle. And I will give 1 lecture either tomorrow or the day after on this issue, continuing from the previous series I've given. But it's important on how you look at a woman. Sometimes you look at her as an animal with animalistic attractions. That's predominating in the West. Sometimes you look at her only with the spectacles of fiqh and the superficial aspect of religion. That's also limiting her. The Urafah have a different outlook on the woman. And this, inshallah, we'll speak about later. Now, in the Quran, a wali, a disciple, someone close to Allah, someone who manifests divine attributes and as a result is Allah-like, such a person in the Quran is never explicitly called a kafir, because the common layman would be totally be perplexed and misunderstand. So explicitly, the awliya, the waliullah, they're never called a kafir in the Holy Quran explicitly on the outside. The claim is that on the inside it is the case. I'll explain that in a minute. But a mu'min, a simple step 1 mu'min believer, is explicitly called a mushrik in the Quran. وَمَا يُؤْمِنُ أَكْثَرُهُمْ بِاللَّهِ إِلَّا وَهُمْ مُشْرِكُونَ. Most people who are believers are mushrik. Now this is not shirk in the open sense, because they're believers at the end of the day. It's the hidden forms of shirk, which I don't want to go into what that is. Maybe I've discussed it here before, but it's not an area I want to go right now. But most believers who believe in Allah, they're concealed mushriks. In relation to the word kaafir, here, there's a lot of meaning here. Both explicit, implicit, outer and inner. Kaafir is one who is hiding something. It's a concealer, a hider, if we have such a word, a concealer. That is the meaning of kafir. This concealing characteristic and feature has a wide range of masadiq applications. Me and you, unfortunately, only have understood all our lives of one mistaq and application of what it means to be a kafir, and that is one who denies Allah. That is what they've hidden, belief in Allah. They've concealed it from themselves. And that's one of the technical definitions of a kaafir, or atheist, or non-believer. But this kaafir has a lot of meaning. A lot of meanings. Why? Because the essential definition is literally, is they're a concealer. We only have understood one aspect of concealing, and that's a negative aspect of concealing. And we think there's only one type of kafir. But in the Quran, implicitly, we see that kafir is used in manners that are describing the awliya Allah. But it's not open to the masses. It's implicit. It's an esoteric layer of the Quran. The access for the masses is not there. But then we see that kafir is of two types. It's a bad type and a good type. The reason why me and you may feel uncomfortable with it is because all our lives we were trained in a particular way of understanding this term. But all the words of the Quran have the same way of understanding. Zalim, kafir, munafiq, and many other terms. Mudil, sahir, all these there are good types, there are bad types. When you want to translate words of the Quran, you have to start with the literal meaning. You can't jump to the technical definition. If you do, you're limiting your understanding of the Quran. I want to go through a certain verse. إن للقرآن ظهرا وبطنا ولبطنه بطنا إلى 7 أبطن. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam was saying. The Quran has a zahir and a batin, and the batin has a batin 7 times over. In some traditions 70, in some traditions 7,000. There's no end, it's infinite. The batin, the inner dimension of the Quran is infinite. It's Allah's knowledge being manifested. You can't just stick to the zahir all your life. You can keep the zahir all your life, and you must keep the zahir all your life. You have to understand and try to incorporate some degree of the batin. The Quran is indirectly explaining the good form of the kafir in this particular 1 or 2 verses of the Holy Quran. The Urafa have attached to this meaning. And what an important meaning it is. The verse is إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا سَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ أَأَنذَرْتَهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ ختم الله على قلوبهم وعلى سمعهم وعلى أبصارهم غشاوة وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. Verses 6 and 7 of the 2nd chapter of the Holy Quran. Those who are kafir, it's irrespective whether you, O Prophet, warn them or you don't warn them. They will not believe. Allah has sealed upon their hearts and their hearing, and there is a veil over their eyes, and lahum, for them there is adhabun adim, a mighty chastisement. Okay, in relation to the zahir, the superficial understanding of this verse, we don't have a problem, and we all accept it. And it's in relation to a certain class of kaafir and munafiqs. Once upon a time, the narrative, we can read it, who it was applying to. It applies also today to those who share the same attributes as those munafiqeen and kuffar. Whether you want them or not, they won't believe. This is the bad definition that we all know of. We always like to know the bad definitions of things because we like to call people names and say they are bad and we are better than them. It's a sickness and spiritual illness that believers have, unfortunately, today, because they always have to be on top of others. It's a sickness that many ulama like me have today, because we have to have the upper hand over others. It makes us sometimes even feel good to call people with such titles. It's all arrogance, it's all contamination. And that's what we're used to. We always want to be better than others. Either directly or indirectly, we want to show this to others. If not through our words, through our actions, through our behavior. Humility is something difficult to acquire. So that aspect of the verse, there's no need to give a commentary. It's self-evident here. Here Ibn Arabi goes through the botanic meaning here, saying, look, in these two verses, there are codes given. There are codes given. Codes to what? To the good type of kaafir. Why? For me and you to become one. How? Listen to the verse. Don't think these codes, these prescriptions are given just ready to anyone. You have to endeavor. This may be very new to many of you, and I want to apologize in advance. But I feel that it has to come out. For how long do we want to live in the closet? For how long do we want to suffice with one understanding of Islam all our lives? As if that's it. All of Islam is that one understanding. And it's a Zahiri understanding. Until when? The Urafa have really gone through, experienced these things. When Ibn Arabi was speaking of nails testifying and hairs testifying, something which the Quran speaks about in theory. وَتُكَلِّمُنَا أَيْدِيهِمْ وَتَشْهَدُ أَرْجُلُهُمْ. The hands speaking to us in the hereafter. Legs testifying. The Urafa have seen this in this world. They've experienced it. It's not just a piece of theoretical diktats given. They've experienced it. They want me and you to experience it. And that's why I feel, brother, that it's necessary for us, especially with the youth, at a young age, these things are shared with them. He says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, those who are kafir, سَتَرُوا مُحَبَّتَهُمْ عَنْهُمْ. They conceal their love of Allah from others. They have intense love of Allah. They worship Allah out of their love for Allah. not for heaven or hell. They don't worship Allah to get reward. There's no use you telling them this has this sabab, this action has this sabab. But these people, they're concealers. They're concealing their love of Allah. They've reached this level. When they reach this level, they conceal it from people. It's very difficult to do that. You keep on speaking about the thawab, the rewards, when you do X action or Y action. For them, it doesn't make any. It's irrespective to them. What are you talking about? Worshipping Allah for reward? Do it out of pure love for Allah's sake. And you speak of a kind of business contract. Not to say that it's bad if you worship Allah to get to heaven. It's good. But for them, it's something that they can't tolerate. When you bring worldly or financial or hereafter gain, when you mix that with Allah, no, it's pure love out of, for the sake of Allah. And they hide it. And you keep on speaking about, do this action, you get this thawab. No, they don't accept it. Even the other way, some people, they do some action not to go to hell. Even if we used to tell them, don't do this action because it'll take you to hell, it doesn't matter for them. They just want to be with Allah. You can't scare them with these punishments, with these rewards. You can't make them excited with those rewards. They are on a different plane. They are concealers, but they're concealing their love of Allah from others. سواء عليهم أأنذرتهم. It's irrespective of whether you warn them, whether the Prophet warns them, بوعيدك الذي أرسلتك به. Whether you warn them of the punishments that I have conveyed to you, O Prophet, to them, whether you warn them of that, أم لم تنذرهم, or whether you don't, لا يؤمنون. They won't believe. The good form of kafir, they won't believe. Because they're drowned in their love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, the Holy Prophet has to give the punishments and the rewards of all actions to all people. But some people, they treat it differently to others. Those who are true lovers of Allah, when they encounter the punishments given, whether you tell them or not, they will not believe in those punishments. So what will they believe in? لا يؤمنون بكلامك. They won't believe in your words when you're giving the punishments. فإنهم لا يعقلون غيري. Because they don't intellectualize in other than me. Their aql isn't preoccupied with other than me, Allah. Then you want to speak about punishment with them? They're only preoccupied with me, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they're hiding it. And then you're speaking about punishment with them? وَأَنْتَ تُنذِرْهُمْ بِخَلْقِ. Then you're warning them with creation, with hell and heaven. These are creation. You're warning them with creation. وَهُمْ مَا أَقَلُوهُ وَلَوْ شَاهَدُوهُ. When they don't even see these creations, they don't perceive of these creations. وَكَيْفَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِكَ. So how are they going to believe in it? All these people are preoccupied with is me, Allah. خَتَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ. And Allah seals over their hearts. وَقَدْ خَتَمْتُ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ. Ibn Arabi is speaking on behalf of Allah now, even the commentary. He's saying, and verily I, Allah, will seal over their hearts, but not in the negative sense. فَلَمْ أَجْعَلْ فِيهَا مُتَّسِعًا لِغَيْرِي. And I have assigned no place in their hearts other than for me, Allah. Yes, I've sealed their hearts. For what though? So that other than me, there's nothing in their hearts. It's a positive form of sealing. مَا جَعَلَ اللَّهُ لِرَجُلٍ مِّن قَلْبَيْنِ فِي جَوْفِهِ. Allah hasn't assigned in anyone two hearts in their inside. You only have one heart. You either are occupied with Allah or you're occupied with the dunya. Those who reach high levels, Allah then seals their heart, that they can only now be occupied with Him. And it requires a high level of love, but for His sake. And this is the meaning of being sealed, their hearts being sealed. وَعَلَى سَمْعِهِمْ فَلَا يَسْمَعُونَ كَلَامًا فِي الْعَالَمِ إِلَّا مِنِّي. And He's sealed over their hearing, because they hear nothing in the cosmos but Allah. Their hearing has also been sealed, so that they hear nothing but Allah. Everything returns to Allah. But we get drowned in this worldly dimension of things. We hear the bird, the person, the weather. We hear these, but they only hear that pure existence manifesting. They only hear Him in all noises, in all words. Because their hearing has become sealed. وَعَلَىٰ أَبْصَارِهِمْ غِشَاوَةٌ. And over their eyes, there's a veil. Veil of what? غِشَاوَةٌ مِّن بَهَاءِ عِنْدَ مُشَاهَدَتِي فَلَا يُبْصِرُونَ سِوَايَ. My grandeur on witnessing me has become a veil over them. And they see nothing but me. They don't see other than me. وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. And for them, there's a mighty punishment. What does that mean? For these good forms of kaafir, what is their punishment? He says, إِنِّي, on behalf of Allah, أَرُدُّهُمْ بَعْدَ هَذَا الْمَشْهَدِ السَّنِي إِلَىٰ إِنذَارِكَ وَأَحْجُبُهُمْ عَنِّي. He says, when they reach these levels, then I return them after they've reached these lofty stations. I return them to your warnings, and I veil myself from them. So now they become conscious and attentive to the superficial aspect, to the warnings. Allah veils Himself from these people. Before, they would only hear Him, see Him. But the next step now, they have to return to this realm. They have to encounter what everyone else encounters. The rewards, the punishments. And Allah veils Himself from them. And this for them is a mighty chastisement. It's very difficult for them to tolerate this. كَمَا فَعَلْتُ بِكَ, as I, Allah, did to you, O Prophet. When did this happen to the Holy Prophet? بَعْدَ قَابَ قَوْسَيْنَ أَوْ أَدْنَى, after the Prophet's Mi'raj, where it was all Allah, from beginning to end. قُرْبًا أَنزَلْتُكَ إِلَى مَنْ يُكَذِّبُكَ, level of qurb, which I revealed to you, as a level of proximity that you had, but even you, I returned you to those who denied your message. And you had to face them. You had to face their words of the chastisement that was for you. These people too. It will be a chastisement for them after reaching these levels and hiding it. And then Allah veiling Himself from them, but they now have to be with the people. It's very difficult for them. فَهَكَذَا أُمَنَائِي, these are the trustworthy ones. عَلَى خَلْقِ, over creation. الَّذِينَ أَخْفَيْتُهُمْ رِضَايَ عَنْهُمْ, those who I have concealed my satisfaction in relation to them. I haven't shown it to them. I'm very satisfied with them. I have concealed it from them. فَلَا أَسْخُطُ عَلَيْهِمْ أَبَدًا, but I'll be never angry with them eternally. But Allah has hidden His satisfaction from them. And therefore, were you to ask them about their spiritual states, they would say, we are nothing. They really see themselves as nothing. Very humble people, living in fear. And so here we see that kaafir, its esoteric meaning has been alluded to as a station of elevation for me and you to acquire. It says, وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. And in the Quran, be it for the good kafir or the bad kafir, whenever the talk of azab is mentioned, punishment, it's all lahum. It's all lahum adhabun adhim. The preposition, the lam preposition is used, meaning for your favor there is a mighty chastisement. It doesn't say wa alayhim adhabun adhim. And in that this meaning, we'll cover that tomorrow inshallah. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala
inshallah we'll do ziyarah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين، السلام